My name is Daniel Morden and I am an author and a storyteller. I've written many books, like for example Dark Tales from the Woods or Secret Tales from Wales, both of which are available from your local library. Yeah, because libraries are great. The libraries, by an amazing coincidence, have asked me to tell you a story from one of my books. So this story concerns Jack. Now, it's a long ago story. It's a once upon a time story. I'm sure you know some stories about Jack, but this isn't one of the stories you know. This will be found in my book, Dark Tales from the Woods. I do hope you'll enjoy it. Once upon a time, Jack was walking the highways and byways of Wales looking for work. On top of a hill, he saw a house, a big house, the house of the squire, the rich man. He thought he'd try his luck. So he walked up into the yard. To the right, he saw the barns. To the left, he saw the stables. In front, there was the front door. The door opened, and there stood Megan, the squire's daughter. She took one look at Jack and she was, "How do you do?" And Jack said, "Hiya." Well, they talked about this and they talked about that, and they were getting on like a house on fire when her father came out, and he didn't like what he saw. So "You, what do you want?" "A job." "What can you do?" "Anything." "Is that right? Well, starting from tomorrow, you're looking after my cows then." Jack was delighted. If he had a job, he could spend time with the squire's daughter, Megan. So he turned to Megan and smiled. But she didn't smile back. No. She frowned. That night, Jack slept in the stables. Early the next morning, she came in with a basket. When Jack looked in the basket, there was bread, there was ham, there was beer, there was cheese, there were apples. "This is for you." "Oh, thank you," said Jack. "Does the squire know you stole all this for me? You're going to get in trouble." She said, "Don't worry about that. This is what you got to worry about. You got to be very careful while you're watching over the cows." "Oh, a few cows won't cause me any bother." "No," she said, "I know that. It's not the cows you got to worry about, you see." But then her father came in the stables, and so she went quiet. Her father looked at the basket and then he smiled with his mouth, but not with his eyes. "So, Jack, I want you to take my cows down to the next valley. It's very misty in that valley. So misty, in fact, every day I lose a cow in the mist. Many a man has said he'll catch the thief who's stealing my cows, but no man's ever done it. You say you can do anything, huh? Maybe you'll have a bit more luck than all the others." So off went Jack with the basket, down into the misty valley. Sure enough, it was so misty, if you stretched out your arm, you couldn't see your hand at the end of it. Pretty soon the mist had stuck to Jack's clothes. Jack's clothes had stuck to his skin. He was cold, so he lit a pipe to warm himself. But then he saw someone coming, someone small. They got closer, but they didn't get much bigger. It's a dwarf. The dwarf. "Jack, how'd you do?" "Oh, well, thanks for asking. I'm hungry." "Is that right?" said Jack. "Well, you're in luck. See this basket? All this food was given me by Megan, and you're welcome to share it with me if you're hungry." So the dwarf and Jack sat down. They ate the food together. And then the dwarf said, "I'd have a puff on your pipe if I may." So Jack passed the pipe to the dwarf. The dwarf took a puff on the pipe. He said, "Jack, thank you kindly. The squire's daughter, she must like you to give you all our food and drink. When you see her next, give her this." And he gave Jack a lovely ripe purple plum. Jack said, "I shall. I thought she liked me, but she didn't like it when I got this job." "Ah," said the dwarf, "because this job is a trap. Many a man has come here. No man's ever spent the whole day. Most of them, they run off screaming. If they don't, then they're gobbled up. Jack, who gobbles them up. Is it you? No, said the dwarf, it's not me. On the other side of the valley, you can't see it because of the mist, there's a castle, and in the castle lives a giant. It's the giant. Every day he comes down here and he eats one of the cows. If the squire's man tries to stop him, he eats the man as well. You'll never defeat the giant with the strength in your arm, but you might defeat the giant with the brains in your head. This is what you've got to do. And he whispered a plan into Jack's ear. Jack listened to the plan. Thank you, my friend. Jack got a sack and he stuffed the sack underneath his shirt so that it was hidden. And the mouth of the sack was under his chin. Then he left the dwarf to watch over the cows. He walked down to the bottom of the valley, across the stones in the river, up the other side till he saw looming out of the mist the walls of the castle. Through the gates came the giant, who plucked Jack from the ground, dangled Jack over his open mouth and said, "Tell me why I shouldn't eat you now." And Jack said, "'Cause I'm a giant as well." And the giant went, "Are you?" "Yeah." "Well, if you're a giant, how come you're not giant?" "Ah, that's because I'm the smallest giant in the world." "Is that right?" "Yeah." "Well, then do something giant. Go on." Now this was the Misty Valley, so you couldn't see much, just shapes. Jack bent down, and because it was damp and dark in the Misty Valley all the time, mushrooms grew out of the grass. Jack plucked a big mushroom, held it up, said, "See this?" The giant looked down and saw something round and flat in Jack's hand. "What is it?" "It's a stone. Watch me crush it between my hands." Gah! The giant saw the grey stuff crumble and tumble down between Jack's fingers into the grass. The giant, "Yeah, crush a stone. I could do that." So the giant got a stone, he put it between his hands and went, "Now I shall begin the stone crushing." "Maybe you are a giant after all. Come with me, brother." So he led Jack into the castle, into the kitchen. In the kitchen, on the fire, was a cauldron of porridge. The giant ladled out 2 bowls full of the stuff. One he gave to Jack, the other he kept for himself. "Tell you what," said Jack, "let's have an eating contest. 1, 2, 3, and then he tipped all the porridge into the sack hidden under his shirt. "More!" The giant, "I haven't started mine, and you want a second bowlful." He ladled out a second bowlful for Jack. Jack tipped it into the sack hidden under his shirt. "More!" The giant, "Mine's getting cold. Don't you ever get full?" "Yeah, I do get full, but I got a solution to that." And Jack took a knife, and with the knife he slid across the shirt and the sack beneath, so that there was a gash in the shirt and the sack, and porridge came pouring out. The giant didn't know about the sack, so the giant, "Did you just cut open your own belly?" "Yeah," said Jack. "You see, when you get full, your belly hangs out, and it's just a flap of skin holding all the food in. So I cut through the flap of skin to let the food out so I can eat more. I'll sew it up again later. I do it every Christmas for the pigs in blankets. Now give me more porridge." "No, wait," said the giant. Wait, I'll give you some more porridge in a minute. First of all, I'm going to give that a try." So the giant took a knife, and he slid the knife across his own belly. Oh dear. Oh dear. One dead giant. Jack searched the castle, and he found all the memorabilia the giant had collected over the years. He'd eaten a good few nights in shining armour, so Jack found a white suit of armour with a white helmet and a white visor to hide his face. He found a black suit of armour with a black helmet and a black visor. He found a red suit of armour with a red helmet and a red, yep. He found a white sword and a white shield. He found a black sword and a black. He found a red and a red. He found a white horse. He found a black and at the end of the day, Jack came back to the squire's yard with all the cows. He didn't say anything about dwarves or giants. The squire counted all the cattle, and the squire, "Oh, well done. Yes. Oh, I'm so happy. give Jack whatever he wants. But all Jack wanted was to see Megan. And when he saw her, he reached into his pocket and took out the plum. And she took it in her hand and she said, "How did you know that above all things I love plums?" She popped it in her mouth and she went, It was that way from then on. Every night Jack would sleep in the stables. Every morning she'd come in with a basket full of food, and they'd talk about this and they'd talk about that, and then Jack would go down the misty valley, give the dwarf the basket, the dwarf would give Jack a plum, and they'd talk all day long. They'd chat about this and that, and children's books that they'd borrowed from the library. But one day, when Jack walked back up the hill, he saw smoke rising from one of the barns. He saw Megan crying. He saw the squire's men running around with buckets of water. "Whatever happened while I was gone?" She said, "Oh, Jack, while you were down in the misty valley, a fiery dragon came out the sky, set fire to the barn, and he declared unless he could eat me tomorrow morning, then he would kill everyone here and burn the whole place to the ground. Will you help me fight the dragon tomorrow?" "Him?" said her father. "Him? What's he going to do against the fiery dragon? He's the cowherd. What do you expect him to do? Whack the dragon with a stick?" "Now listen to me. If you have a fiery dragon infestation situation, what you need is a knight in shining armour, though where are we going to get one of them on a Friday afternoon? I don't know." Jack said nothing. He just reached into his pocket, took out the plum, gave it to her, and she smiled bravely, popped it into her mouth, and she said, "Oh, that is beautiful." Next morning she came in to the stables with the basket of food. She sat down beside Jack and she said, "This is my last day alive. So," and she leant over and she gave Jack, it was just over in a moment, all right? It was just on the cheek, it wasn't really anything to talk about. So Jack went down the misty valley, gave the dwarf the basket, the dwarf gave Jack the plum, and then the dwarf said, "Jack, what are you waiting for? Off you go to the giant's castle." So Jack made his way to the giant's castle. He put on the white suit of armour, the white helmet, the white visor to hide his face. He picked up the white sword. He picked up the white shield. He jumped on the white horse. He galloped down to the river, and the horse drank and drank and drank. Meanwhile, up the hill, in the yard, I'm sorry to tell you, the squire and his men had tied the squire's daughter to a fence post. And they were hiding inside the house behind locked doors. She saw something in the sky. It got bigger and bigger and bigger. First it was the size of a bird, then the size of a dog, then the size of a horse, then the size of a house. It was the fiery dragon. Its wings blotted out the light of the sun. Its wings made the sound of thunder. It belched bitter black smoke. Its claws were sharp as swords. Its teeth were sharp as spears. Its eyes were like blazing coals. Its mouth was as big as a cave. It swooped down to grab her, when suddenly out of the smoke came a white knight that did battle with the dragon. The dragon spat a river of fire, but the horse spat a river of water. The dragon spluttered, coughed, beat its wings, and flew away. The smoke cleared. The squire and his men came out to thank the white knight. But he'd gone, vanished. At the end of the day, Jack, hiya, came back with all the cows. He said, "Still alive then?" "Yes," she said, "thanks to a white knight. He came from nowhere. He saved my very life." "That's right," said her father. "I told you we didn't need Jack. We needed a knight in shining armour. I wish he was here right now. If he was, I'd shake the white knight's hand." Jack said nothing. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out the, and she popped it in her mouth. Next morning, she came into the stables with the basket. They talked about this and that. Jack went down the misty valley. The dwarf said, "The dragon's returning." He gave Jack the plum. Jack made his way to the bottom of the valley, skipped across the stones in the river, into the castle. This time the armour was black. The sword was. The shield was. The horse was. Down to the river it drank and drank and drank. Well, as you can imagine, while they were working, the squire's men, they were looking up in the sky, all the, "It's come back, it's returned!" And they rushed inside the house. They grabbed hold of the squire's daughter. They threw her out the door. Bam! They locked her out. She grabbed a pitchfork. The dragon swooped down to grab her. She screamed when suddenly, to save her, to help her, in her battle against the dragon, came a black night. The dragon spat a river of fire. The horse spat a river of water. The dragon spluttered, coughed, beat its wings and flew away. The smoke cleared. The squire and his men came out to thank the Black Knight. There he was, gone. At the end of the day, "Hi, did you have a nice day?" "No," she said. "I think I can safely say it wasn't a nice day." The fiery dragon returned. This time a Black Knight came out of nowhere and saved my life, helped me fight the dragon. "Is that right?" "Yeah," said the squire, "but I don't know why you're telling this to Jack. Jack is the cowherd. He has no business looking at fiery dragons and black knights. It's his business to look at the backsides of cows in the Misty Valley." Jack said nothing. He just reached into his and took out she popped it in her mouth and she said. That night he slept in the stables. Next morning she came in with a basket. They talked about this, they talked about that. Then Jack made his way down the Misty Valley. The dwarf gave Jack the plum. Jack left the basket down to the bottom in the stones in the river, up the other side. This time the armour was red. The helmet, the visor that hid his face was. The sword, the shield, the horse. It galloped to the river and drank and drank and drank. Well, as you can imagine, the squire's daughter, she was making whatever preparations she could this time. She made a helmet out of a tin bucket. She'd strapped a grill pan to her chest. She was practicing with the pitchfork, and sure enough, she heard a scream from outside, and then the squire and all his men pushed her out the front door. They slammed the door. The dragon swooped down. She lunged at the dragon. It belched a bit of black smoke. Then suddenly, out of the smoke came a red knight. He drew his sword. The dragon spat a river of fire. The horse spat a river of... And while the dragon was distracted, Megan lunged with the pitchfork into a soft gap between the scales of the dragon's belly, and the dragon screamed and fell to the ground dead. When the smoke cleared, could they find the red knight? Could they find the red horse? Could they find a dollop of red horse poop in the farmyard? At the end of the day, have you noticed the big red dead thing with the claws and the tail in the corner of your farmyard? Yes, she said, I think it's fair to say I have noticed it. It tried to eat me because it's the fiery dragon I've been telling you about for days. I killed it with the help of a red knight. Why? Said her father. Are you talking to Jack when you should be upstairs getting ready for the big day tomorrow? Oh, didn't I tell you? Tomorrow you're going to marry the Red Knight. Yeah, I sent word to all the noblemen and princes of Wales. They're all coming here tomorrow. Among them will be the Red Knight, I'm sure. And the vicar will declare you man and wife. What? She said, I don't want to marry the Red Knight. I've never even seen his face. How do you expect me to marry a man whose face I've never seen, who I've never even spoken to? This is typical of you. You never consult me. You never ask me about my future. You just decide what's going to happen to me. And then if you remember, you tell me. Well, if you'd bothered to ask me, I would have told you that actually I'm already in love. Yes, I'm going to marry... Jack, there's something I have to tell you. I love you and I'm going to marry you. The squire said, you're not marrying Jack. Oh no, you're going to marry the Red Knight. Jack, go down the stables where you belong. My daughter, go upstairs to your bedroom. Jack slipped her the plum. She smiled bravely, popped it in her mouth. Next morning she came into the stables. She said, this is not fair. I want to marry you. And she leant over and she gave... I'm sorry, she did. It's what happened. She gave Jack a kiss. It was just on the cheek, right? It was over in a moment. Nothing to see here. Jack went down the Misty Valley. The dwarf said, Jack, all the noblemen and princes of Wales are on their way to marry the woman you love. This is what you have to do. So, in the yard, all the noblemen and princes of Wales were strutting around in whatever red clothes they could possibly find. Then into the yard came the Red Knight on his red horse. There he is, said the squire. Get down off your horse. Quick, quick. Vicar, declare them man and wife. The vicar, the Red Knight, Megan, I declare you married and so you must kiss." And then the Red Knight took off his helmet. "Hiya!" The squire. "You?" "Yeah," said Jack. "Me, Dad." And so Jack married Megan, and they went to live in the giant's castle with their friend the dwarf, and they're there even now. I saw them just last week. I hope you enjoyed the story. You can find it in my book, Dark Tales from the Woods, which is available from your library. Once again, I'd like to thank the library service for giving me this opportunity to tell you this tale. And I hope one day we will meet in person so that we can share stories together. Thank you. Goodbye.